Good evening. We'll go ahead and jump in. I just want to mention two things as we start. Kind of like with a water sprinkler, eventually we're going to start this way, come this way. If you have a family tradition, either in your family, your extended family or something, we're going to have a time just to kind of give some examples of things that you might do in your family. So nothing's required. If you would like something to write on, because this is the only thing I've handed out tonight, there are blank sheets of paper here on the back table. Kevin, is there some in a chair over there, hopefully? And then there's some here, and that'll just be optional for you if you want to make any other notes. This is probably a guy question, and if Kyle was in here, we'd start with him. Any of you guys gone quail or pheasant hunting? Okay, what's the challenge of quail hunting? Even if you see birds, what's the challenge? Finding them, and then what? If you shoot at all of them, they just fly faster and you don't hit one. It really, that's a big art. I didn't start until later. My younger brother, boy, Kent's just dead-eyed dick on that. He can sometimes get 3 in one covey, but you have to decide very quickly this one, and then this one, and this one, and if you shoot at all of them, you miss everything. And so, a part of what we try to do in our family is to say we're going to have very specific items that we're working on at each stage of life while our children are with us, knowing that there's more that needs to be done, and hopefully, if we're doing one thing well, these other things will come out. And so this sheet is what we did as our kids came into the world, because we, as a partnership, wanted to have a very specific target of what we're doing, and we've never changed this because this was what we used, and this was kind of our initial guideline in working with our own kids. The only thing that I would do differently, were I to do it again, is that I would put heart first. But we'll come back to this, and just let me kind of talk through some things, because these will all tie into family traditions. I'm not trying to be sarcastic, and I'm not trying to just to be silly, but I want you to think about this. Do you know of anyone who has fallen away from the Lord who worships regularly?
What was that last part?
Who worships regularly. In other words, you think a person comes to worship 3 times a week or whatever. Do you know anybody who has fallen away from the Lord who worships regularly? And I'm sure somewhere there's an exception, but someone help me. What am I trying to say by that question? The common denominator of people who stay faithful is that they worship God. And Satan's always trying to either give an excuse, or someone offended me, and you just fill in the blank, and he doesn't really care what it is. And so one of the things that we started from literally the first day when Luke came home, we started reading Jesus, the Friend of Children. And there's a larger one. These are out of print. We literally wore out 2 of these. And it later came out in a second edition as the big picture book. And these hook people who do these illustrations, well, like, here's Nicodemus. It's different on every page, but here are these just fabulous pictures. And for small children, here they're letting the guy down through the roof. And it's just, from the very beginning, and this is something I just feel really strongly about from last week, my family was not a touchy-huggy family. I mean, we were loved, and we had a lot of association. But I told you, I've hugged my dad. He died in 2009, but I hugged him maybe 2 or 3 times, and he couldn't just reach up and hug me at the same time. And that's okay. I mean, they're Dust Bowl survivors, you know. He's breaking horses for grocery money when I come into the world. That's a hard way to earn $25. He worked at the local sale barn for $25. It might be 2 hours or 24 hours all night. And my dad just worked and worked and worked. He was a great guy, but he couldn't do this. And that has to be okay. I have to let him to do that. But because of Sheila's family, and especially her dad being kind of the emotional hearth of the whole family, then the big deal was we're going to hold our children literally, and we're going to have family devotionals the first night they come home. We moved to Australia. We're the wise old age of 26, and Luke is 9 months old. And then while we're there, we have Heather, and Elise is coming along, and we got one letter from an elder and said, "Dear Hartmans, we thought we sent you to Australia to evangelize and not to populize." And my wife said, "You should send him a note and say, if you paid us more money, we could do other things than just populize." Which we refrained, Wayne, from sending that back to our supporting elders. And so, here's Luke. We've started this, and we have certain questions we ask every night, and we sing a song. Here comes Heather, and so Luke's going to be here. And by the time Heather learned to talk, she could answer the questions. So by the time our kids were 5, we wanted to know every book of the Bible, a major theme, the 12 sons of Jacob. Now, if you're a little kid, and by having a devotional you can stay up just a little bit longer, that's not a crisis for a small child. And they love repetition. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And then they had this wonderful little sister named Dinah. We also then wanted to know the kings of Judah: Rehoboam, Abijah, Asa, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, Athaliah, Uzzah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, Manasseh, Amnon, Josiah, Jehoiakim, and Joachim. And if we just do this every night and we add one after we've read Jesus, the Friend of Children, what am I doing? If they're in your Bible class and you teach something from the Bible, they bring some context to the lesson. Have you been teachers and seen the deer in the headlight look? Have no idea what you're talking about, and on and on. Heather's 3. She was always real gangly. Had her little doll, Sarah. She dropped Sarah. And I wasn't abusing her, but I picked her up by the knee and the elbow for her to get Sarah. And she's coming up, and she's going to hug Sarah while I'm holding her. And the preacher says, we're going to study about the man who built the walls of Jerusalem. And at 3, Heather says, we're going to study about Nehemiah today. So do you see what we're thinking? If we help our children to have a framework where they can talk about the story of the Bible as it unfolds, then hopefully this will help them to worship for the rest of their life. And if you are teaching their class, if you are preaching, if you'll just do something from the Bible and not from a psychology book, they're going to bring something to class from the very beginning. I mentioned last week we started dating on the 15th of January, 1971. And it's either late March or April. There was an all-school retreat, and we went somewhere out toward Kingfisher, somewhere to a camp. And the speaker was just a very interesting guy. He had been a missionary in Switzerland and other stuff. And Stanley Shipp did a lot of things with young people in the St. Louis area. But that first night, he said, I can tell some of you are sweet on each other. And I'm thinking, what a nice way to say that, I can tell some of you are sweet on each other, and if you stay together, someday you'll probably have kids. And I need to give you some bad news. If you have kids, they're going to become teenagers. So rather than worrying about them when they become teenagers, I would encourage you to start praying for them before they ever come into the world. Okay? I would never just thought that specifically. This was a real hardship. There was a light mist, so we had to get under one umbrella outside because there was so much noise going on. And that night, in March or April of 71, we started praying, assuming we become a family, and if we have children, then we started praying for our children. And Luke's not born until August of 78. And see, I think, what a wonderful idea. I would never have thought to do that. And so 7 years before he took his first breath outside the womb, then we have been praying for him. And then, Wayne, you get to thinking, well, if we're going to pray for kids, we might as well start praying for potential in-laws and their parents and who they are and what they're doing. Sorry, let me just shake the chills down for a second. And so at the weddings that I got to do, then I told a daughter-in-law and a son-in-law, we accept you as an answer to prayer, and we have been praying for you since March of 1971, maybe even before your parents were together. What does Samuel's name mean? Asked of God. And then you get to thinking about Mary and Elizabeth, and this is something that has just been such an important thing to us, in that, to me, the whole thing with both our family traditions and seeking to help our kids to be raised in the faith is that it has always started with prayer, very specifically and for them. And for example, of course I didn't know this, our daughter-in-law our daughter-in-law through school, you did know from one Sunday to the next what color hair she would have when she came to church. That was just who she was. So at their wedding in Tulsa, not knowing that, she's standing right here, and I said, Kate, we have been praying for you since March or April of 1971. I have wondered, what color eyes would you have? Would you sing soprano or alto? And I wondered what color hair you had, and everybody from Tulsa just started laughing. Because it was like, well, good luck. It's going to be different next week. Well, I didn't know that. And so as each of our in-laws have come into the family, then that's been something that we have talked to them. We consider you a specific answer to prayer, and that's been something that's been a vital part of our families. We're going to talk about letters, but let me just mention this, and I'm due to do this. Every so often on our daughter-in-law and son-in-law's birthday, I write a letter to their mother and thank her for bringing our in-laws into the world, and specifically thank them for the contribution that they've made to our family, and for both sides of our family to be working and praying that this will be an intergenerational faith project, and that our grandchildren and great-children will continue to be people of faith. So I want us to turn to the print side for a second, and we'll just do this for a quick review. So far, I have taken 4 out of the 7 grandchildren to the fair this year. And as we mentioned last week, there are 3 things that I always think of, especially, it's true of bigger people, but especially with the little ones. And I'm at 3-1 at the top, eye contact. I try to have as much positive, reinforcing eye contact as I can. And I was in a class once, and the guy said, if you try to look in both eyes, it gets confusing. Choose one eye. Rather than trying to go back and forth. I would never thought of that either. But he says, and typically it's the left. They can't really tell, but I have been with a 4-year-old and 3 8-year-old boys. And I've got 2 girls and he's a sophomore and wearing a size 13 shoe, and he's about 6'3", and we don't know where the top is going to be on that, so I'll have to be doing a little bit of this to make eye contact with him. But very specifically, as much as I can, as often as I can, I want to have positive eye contact with them while I'm with them. And I mentioned this last week. Boy, if my mom made eye contact with you in church, that was not good. Anybody have that happen in your family? If mom gave you that look, nothing had to be said. And you think how impactful eye contact can be, and not necessarily in a negative way, but you think if you're this big, how often do you get eye contact from an adult? Seriously. Now, it's getting harder to get up, but the whole time I was at Eastside, every time I could, with our little bitty people, I would drop down on one knee and talk to them, because if you're doing it like this all the time and you're 3 or 4 years old, how often does an adult get literally at your level? One of our kind of strange traditions is that, and I started with our nephew Brent, when I hug, are you brave enough to have a hug? Come here real quick. When I hug one of our this is about Isaac, but when I hug him, just listen. It's not indigestion, it's a bear hug. Does that make sense? It's good. Yeah. Sometimes I do that when someone doesn't know, and I need to explain. So I don't have indigestion. On and on it goes like this. But in our family, from the first day they come home from hospital, they start getting bear hugs. We had a girl at Eastside, and from the time she was 3, she would not leave the church building until we had a bear hug. She would not leave the church building. And my name was Big Hug, so I couldn't lose 100 pounds and become Skinny Hug. You know, that just doesn't sound right. And she would tell her mom, I can't leave, I haven't had a hug with Bear Hug. If they were going to be gone for 2 or 3 weeks, then she needed that many bear hugs before she left, because she was going to be gone. Positive eye contact. The second one is focused attention. Deal with this in your own generation. I wish sometimes we would turn our phones off and just listen to our kids. Let me just leave it there. They're only with us such a short time. And just over and over and again, I just see people, and they're so busy on their phones, and here are these precious 2 or 3 kids, and there's no eye contact, there's no personal attention, and yeah, they may get some ice cream or something, but I'm thinking you're missing such a golden opportunity, because this is not going to be here very long. And so that bleeds into the third one, appropriate contact. How many guys have daughters? Okay? I have a philosophy. If I'm not hugging them, they're going to be hugging somebody else as they get older. And we'll talk about that in a different context. And that's something that's very, very significant. And so with our birth children, our grandchildren, and now our church children at church, these are 3 things that I just work on constantly. And every time that I have the opportunity to be with our kids, those things are just in the forefront of my mind. I'll go ahead and mention this because it kind of ties together. That's part of the reason why I try to take each one of them by themselves to the fair. We try to pick other things through the year that each of them enjoy and like, and we do that. But we also try to go away over Memorial Day, and we go into deep South Texas. We stay in one house, and some families can't do this, you know. I've talked to some people, and they says we would last about 2 days together, and it just wouldn't work. But our 3 kids were raised on a 747. You know, Luke's 9 months old on the first trip. Heather's 18 months on her first trip, and Elise is 8.5 months pregnant on her first trip inside her mom. And so our kids were together for 14 to 16 hours. And we would be planning, you take a backpack, you take something else, 2/3 of it's for you, the other third's for your brother, for your sisters. And they just got used to being really close in proximity. And so on Saturday, we can occupy at 3 o'clock. Mom and Dad go to Walmart. There's breakfast stuff, lunch stuff. But whatever the local church is doing, that's what we're going to do that week. And then on Monday night, the Luke Hartmans are going to cook dinner because they have a birthday coming. On Tuesday night, Heather and David are going to cook. We do cook out, and we go out on Wednesday because of church. The Mitchells cook on Thursday. Mr. and Mrs. H cook on Friday, and we leave early on Saturday. And we just have this time to be with our kids or with our grandkids, and as our 3rd grade girl said, Papa takes the boys to breakfast, and he takes the ladies to lunch. So I've got 6 grandkids, and so we start on Sunday morning, and George and I, the oldest one, we go and have a special place we go and eat. And what am I doing? 3 things: eye contact, focused attention, specific hug. The other thing on the back, and then we want to just totally change gears. From the time our children, well, it's also in print on the other side. From 1 to 6, my specific focus is on heart. Okay? I'm with a 4-year-old, and we're just going to be talking about God created things, how are you doing, we loved our family, everything we could do. And again, I'm not a pessimist by nature, but you stop and think, this won't be hard to do. Give me some attributes of a teenager with a bad attitude. They are what? Wayne, give me some characteristics of a teenager with a bad attitude.
They know more than you do.
Okay.
And they're not going to pay attention to you.
Okay. What else? Pardon? Angry? Stubborn? The world owes them something. And I just think, if potentially that's what we don't want to happen, let's start working on this in the very beginning, on attitude and heart. And that's why the specific target from 1 to 6 is I'm specifically working on your attitude, your heart, just how you function, how you see things in your family. Then, as I move to the next age group, from 7 through 12, as their development starts taking place and their thinking starts crystallizing, then we're working specifically on the head things. And like with my older 2 grandsons, we're trying to get a book for all the Old Testament, talk through the Old Testament story, have a theme for each one of them, help them as they think. And again, I'm thinking, I want you to worship it all the rest of your life. I want to contribute things into your thinking to do that. And then 13 to 18, discussions. What can you do with the driver's license to serve God that you couldn't do before? What are things that we can do to serve God? Now, we started this with George when he was about 2 or 3. And there'd be some people this wouldn't be appropriate. But I said, George, we have a friend in the hospital, and I need you to come and go with me to get a visit. And he ran to Mom, and he says, Mom, I need a Band-Aid. And Kate said, are you hurt? And he says, no, but somebody is hurt, and they're in the hospital, and so I need a Band-Aid. And so we started a Band-Aid ministry with this 3-year-old. And so, Wayne, if you're in the hospital and we come in, and this 3-year-old says, we're here to put a Band-Aid on your hurt, and we're here to ask how you're doing, and we're here to have a prayer. Now, you wouldn't take them to some people who are very seriously ill, but you find a place where we need to put a Band-Aid, and what does this 3-year-old think? Okay, we have somebody in the hospital, we're actually helping them because we're putting them, that's what he understands. We're putting a Band-Aid, and if you're in the hospital, you've been stuck somewhere. And you can find an appropriate place for us to put a Band-Aid. And then, George would ask, and how are you doing? And give you a chance to do that. And then 2 or 3 times, and I just would fall through, he'd go, your turn for the prayer. So we go to St. Anthony's, and we do the tunnel because, we're 3 years old. So we ride the elevator down, and we do the tunnel. And you can't say elevator, we're going to ride the alligator. And we're going to go up and we're going to do this. And so every time I can take, initially our children, and now our grandchildren with us, that's the best medicine you're going to get all day. And let me just say one other thing. How many of us are preachers' kids? Okay? How many spiritually neutral preachers' kids do you know? If you do a scale of 1 to 10, how many preachers' kids do you know that are just kind of sliding between 4 and 5 in the middle? And what's the typical place with most preachers' kids? We're usually on one side or we're on the other. And one of the things we talked about from the very beginning, if our children choose to be unfaithful, we want to be in spite of the attention and the investments we paid in them rather than because we're too busy serving God to take care of them. And every time we can do something together, and every time we have very specific times to do that, then those things are very, very appropriate. Okay, family traditions. Anybody have one you want to share? We're going to start this side. Good. Next. Yes.
We have one with Scott's side of the family. We started, I don't know, probably about 5 years ago during Christmas time because everybody was just exchanging a bunch of gift cards no one needed, you know. And so instead of doing that, we just make a themed party every year.
Okay.
And instead of spending money on the gift card for each other, instead of gifts, we have this big party, and it's like maybe Greek themed or something, you
Okay.
know. And so with the Greek food, everybody dresses in costume, so you spend the money more on the fun stuff. Or
Okay.
whatever. It's a lot of
It's kind of on each other sharing and doing that. Excellent. Chances go by? Up to halfway? Yes.
I guess this could be a tradition. When my father was alive, we used to draw names
Okay.
and we'd go shopping for little we got.
Okay.
Just a little tradition.
Very good. Okay, starting here. Yes.
So, about 5 or 6 years ago, my family started, we're all spread out. I'm here in Oklahoma, my brother's family's in Minnesota, and my family's in Michigan. So, we pick a spot every summer, and around Father's Day weekend, we go and camp for a week.
Good. Good. What happens while your family's camping?
It's great, and then it's not.
I started to say it makes the bed at home feel better.
Yeah, I have a twin brother, and, you know, we get along great, 1,000 miles apart, you know, it's one of those, so the week is great, and then we're ready for next year.
And I think we all understand. Good. Coming this way. Yes.
We would always get together every year just before Christmas and make candy at my grandma's.
Oh, fabulous.
And it would be grandkids and great-grandkids, and everybody got involved. Made a huge mess. I think we made more chocolate out of the counter than we ever did
Yeah.
candy, but it was all about being together.
Fabulous. And it never hurts if you can kind of go like this and take a sample off the counter.
Like the spoon, and sometimes you
E-
don't start packing it.
Exactly. Very good. We're coming through. Anyone else?
Because, like, it's an everyday tradition, really. It's dinner at the table with the family.
Good.
We have a certain set of rules, you know, no tech at the table. We
Good.
Have the kids practice their prayers, kind of thing. But it's always that set time, and it's very rare that we break it. Unless we're going out to eat or something like that with friends.
We learned that from Wayne and Tammy Roberts.
Good.
The no tech at the table, and
Yeah.
that has been, it's on our family rules list, and it's good because you have to talk. I mean,
Yeah. And I won't get the last term, but this is our youngest daughter and son at the table. They have high, low, and then there's something else. It's either something you're thankful for, whatever. And every person then talks about here was either a high point and a low point, and it either may be something that you're thankful for or something else. And that's just, I mean, they do a prayer at the beginning, but before they finish, and now the 4-year-old is the, I'll find out what it is, but it's a real specific term, high, low, and it has a third one there. And at every meal, there's a chance to kind of talk about, here's something that has happened that's been good and bad that we worked on from there. Good. Anyone else? Yes.
Family camping trip, grew up always camping in the same place every year with my extended family.
Good.
Fond memories.
Good. Well, I want you to think about something from, and again, with traditions with our families, I think of 2 or 3 things, and they're related from this point of view. I think one of seasons of the year. There are certain things that our family can do in this season that we can't do other times. But I also think of the season of our lives. And one of the things that Sheila and I had talked about a lot is that they didn't come to stay, they came to go. But while they're here, we want to put, my term is, fingerprints of faith on them. Daryl Davis's uncle, Frank Davis, did basketball camps, which I loved going to growing up at OC. But as I got older, I was just talking with him, and I said about our children, I said, you know, you're a coach, you know, you played basketball. How have you dealt with your kids in terms of that? And he said 2 or 3 things that always stuck with me. He said, one, some people make the mistake of trying to relive their youth and childhood through their children. And he said some children don't want to do the stuff that their parents did. And he said, my philosophy is that from the time they're very little, you listen very carefully to them and you watch them. And if they're interested in something, you become interested in it. And even if you have to invest to find out, and you let your child take that initiative in what they're interested in doing. And this, again, we had this expression, our church family. And every time we would travel or go somewhere, we're going to get to meet a part of our church family we've never met before. And we told our kids, every night of the week, we can do everything we do in worship except the Lord's Supper. However, on Sunday, we get to do this with our spiritual family. And so our spiritual family has been such a blessing. Luke is 10 years old. You know, so this will be 88. Computers are hardly coming out, but he's really interested. We make all kinds of cuts on things and sacrifice. We get a little computer he's able to get, but we've got two guys named Steve. One Steve has gone to London to train commercial artists to how to go from a brush to a computer for graphic arts. He's charging $5,000 for seminars, which we couldn't do that. But a 10-year-old little boy would say, I tried da-da-da-da-da-da. And Steve would say, oh, you need to. And so in 2 years, Steve talked Luke through everything that he did in this $5,000 seminar. And so at 12 years of age, Luke has this foundation that's going to be with him for the rest of his life. And I couldn't do that for him, but Steve did. We come back, and he's at Carl Albert, and he gets to talking to the librarians, and he just said, well, when software comes in, I can actually install that for you. And so for 6 years at Carl Albert, they never called the tech. They just, when something came in, they said, oh, get Luke during the noon hour or something. And he got to install all of the software for the junior high and the high school. And then he goes to OC and he manages the Mac lab. And if you're a graphic arts student or something, then he's the one that takes care of that. He did the school website for 8 or 9 years and did a degree in Bible, worked in the church for 3 years, and then was asked to move to OC to help faculty members with any computer issues that they had. And where did it start? Okay, I couldn't help him. I didn't know how to do it, but that's what he was interested in. We did midweek on Tuesday night. We picked up a girl from Chile, and our second daughter, Heather, would talk to Ruby and start learning Spanish words and stuff as we'd go to church. And so we're on the block, and so she takes 4 years of Spanish. She starts translating for the clinic downtown. She spent one summer in Chile. Another summer she spent in Seville, Spain, women in Spanish literature. And today she's an immigration attorney and spends all day talking to people. Well, she works for a firm out of Miami, Florida. Okay? Train up a child, and what does the next part say? Train up a child in the way that they should go, and listen very carefully to your children, and they will tell you something, okay? This is neither Sheila or I. At 12, Heather says, Father, I would like to have the complete plays of Shakespeare, not in NIV, I would like to have them in King James. I said, okay. So for 6 months, she did her homework, and she sat in that chair, and she read completely through the plays of Shakespeare twice. She can tell you every character. She can tell you the plot. And Father, I can tell you when they get knocked off. And so if you go to Shakespeare in the Park with Heather on the blanket, she'll say, Father, here comes his best line in the play. Okay? That's not us, but that's her. Our youngest at 3rd grade, we have a note. I'm going to OCC. I'm going to study counseling, and I'm going to become a counselor. And today she's a marriage and family therapist. And so with our children and our grandchildren, rather than you putting expectation on them and you must do this, listen to them. And this is something very important. If you don't listen to me when I'm little, why should I listen to you when I'm older? And my grandfather always called us sir. We were just treated with absolute respect, and you think we learn to reciprocate how we've been treated. And so these things very specifically about that focused attention, but listen to them and explore the things they're interested in doing. One of our 8-year-olds wanted the Death Star, and it came in like 8 packages, and it's probably as big from here to here, and it's about, it took him, I don't know, 2 or 3 months to do that. He's probably gonna be an engineer. And I read something on the airplane once, they put brain probes on male engineers, there's a few females, and guess what? The guys can literally shut down one half of their brain, and you know the building can collapse and they'll never know it because they're totally focused. One track mind is not just an exaggeration. The girls, both sides worked all the time. And the guy said some of the guys are smarter, but they can't explain to you what they know, where whatever the girl knows, she can explain to you because both sides of her brain are functioning at the same time. And so I talked to Luke and I says, Matey, why are you in this office now? He said, Dad, these computer guys can do this, this, and this. They can do anything except talk to each other. He said, I'm the only person who knows what everyone is doing, and I'm kind of the coordinator, and these guys are really, really smart. But you put these brain, and they literally can shut down one half of their brain. And girls, you looked at them, you know, there's like nobody there, but everything's focused just on one thing. And if you have a little guy, you need to respect that. And we're going to talk more about that later in terms of communication with each other. Let me do something just real quick. I want to just talk real quickly about, and this will be Australia, but just to show you some things that we thought about. Our school in Australia starts in February. And so when Luke started the school, Sheila said, we, the whole family, are going to go to the Great Australian Ice Creamery and we're going to celebrate the first day of school. And so from the time Luke was in the first grade until now, we now do this in August and we do it in January. And Brahms is a great functional substitute. Then every year when school starts, at the very beginning, what are your classes? Do you have any friends in that? What's going on? And our family has celebrated the opening of the first day of school. If you're at home with us, Sheila does pancakes on the day of your birthday, and you will get pancakes initially in the shape of your birthday, and you'll get the first group. You can get more later, but if you're 8, then you will get this big 8, and if you want chocolate chips or nuts in it or whatever. And so she always does a birthday pancake in honor of the honoree. And then through the day, she makes these white sugar cookies, does some icing on them, and will decorate them the number of your birthday. And so that's something just to do very special just for that particular person. We tried to take our kids to as many different activities as we could. And one of the things that we did, and again, this is back in January, so back in summer, there was a concert in Sydney on the last day of the Festival of Sydney, and there would be between 100 to 110,000 people come to the concert. And the rules were, you could put a blanket down, and until the last 45 minutes it was yours, and then squatters would come in and would sit on the side. And so we would go into Sydney, the kids would do stuff, I would take an umbrella, plenty of fluids because it might be 100 degrees, and I would sit under this umbrella from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until the concert started at 7. Obviously you'd need some breaks along the way for them to help you. We would bring food, and it was like having a picnic with 100,000 people. People brought all kinds of stuff, and then the last 30 minutes, as long as you kept your bottom on both sides of the aisles, then you could come in, and we would have a concert with 100,000 people to end the school year. And so when we came back, CCCC in August would have a huge craft show, and they would have a concert. Our family, until we all got married and had small children, always went to the Christmas end of the year concert down at the Pops, and that's something our family has just really, really enjoyed doing. I'm just thinking how the best way to say this. One of the things I try to do, and again, let's say you're 8 years old, how often do you get a letter sent to your house that has your name on it if you're 8 years old? Someone holler fire. I try to send at least 6 letters a year to children, grandchildren, and in-laws. And just because my kids are faithful today, I don't want to take for granted that they'll be faithful tomorrow, even as adults. And you stop and think, there are all kinds of creative Valentine cards, other things. And ladies, just shut down for a second. Let me talk to the guys, okay? So y'all just kind of zone out. I typically buy 10 to 12 Valentine cards each year in February. Kristen, if you get a Valentine card in October, what do you know? He didn't go down to Hallmark in October and buy a Valentine's card, and I've never heard of a guy getting shot for sending his wife a Valentine's card out of season. And the same thing's true with our children. And so sometimes I buy things that are there. I send them postcards that has a verse on the back, and you have to read the verse, and there'll be something on the other side. I'll try to do these 2 things real quickly, and we'll finish. I gave a Wednesday night lesson several years ago, and this lovely young lady came up. She wasn't young, but young lady came up, and she said, "You were too young to remember, but I was a sophomore in high school in the 60s, and I became pregnant." And she said, "I can't tell you the stigma that was attached in the 60s to being pregnant in a small community." And she said, "We decided for me to go to Amarillo, to an unwed mother's home, adopt out the baby." And she said, "When I got there, there was a letter from your grandmother who was an elder's wife in the church." You want to close the door just real quick? She said, "I can't tell you how embarrassing it is. Every day you get bigger, but at least I wasn't home. I wasn't people that I knew." But she said, "Every day that I was there, I got a letter from an elder's wife from my home congregation telling me that God was going to work with me, this was going to come out okay." And she said, "I just can't tell you how often I read those because I was so embarrassed and I had so much stigma." And then to think that every day while I was in the home, your grandmother sent me a letter to encourage me and to help me. And then here it came. I am probably an elder's wife today because your grandmother took the time to write to me. One of the things that our elders are doing is sending notes to the little guys who were in the Mighty Men. We'll be doing the same with the others. And you just stop and think, every time we can catch our spiritual and our physical children doing something good, let's remind them of it and encourage them to do that. And I just think that's something that takes a little bit of thought, but it's something that can have a lot of impact. And I can't tell you how often I've done a funeral and asked for someone's Bible, and there will be some type of a special note there. I'm going to try to read through this real quick, and we're done. I'll see if I can get through this. Laughter in the walls. I pass a lot of houses on my way home, some pretty, some expensive, and some inviting. But my heart always skips a beat when I turn down the road and I see my house nestled against the hill. I'm especially proud because of the way it looks. I drew the plans myself, and it started out large enough for us. I had a study. Now 2 teenage boys reside there. We had a guest room, and my girl and 9 dolls are permanent guests. It had a small room that Peg hoped would be her sewing room, and 2 boys are swinging on the Dutch door, have claimed this room as their own. So it really doesn't look right now as if I'm much of an architect, but it will get larger again. One by one, they will go away to work, to college, to service, to their own house, and then there will be room. There will be a guest room, a study, a sewing room for just the 2 of us, but it won't be empty because every corner in every room Every nick in the coffee table will be crowded with memories. Picnics, parties, Christmas, summers, winters, barefoot, vacation, cats, black eyes, graduations, first dates, ball games, arguments, washing dishes, bicycles, boat rides, meals, rabbits, and 1,000 other things that will fill the lives of those who would raise 5. And Peg and I will sit quietly by the fire, and we will listen to the laughter in the waltz. And I pray as kids come and go from your family that you will be able to listen to the laughter in the waltz. God bless.